The second National Annual Men's Parliament comes just before the official launch next month of the 16 Days of Activism for Violence Against Women and Children International Campaign. More than 200 men of South Africa from all walks of life have joined in the virtual parliament. The theme of the second Men's Parliament of this year, held under the banner of Takuwani Riime's men's movement, is Institutionalizing, a response men's movement. Some of the issues to be discussed include poverty, domestic violence and femicide. For more on this, let's now speak to NCOP Deputy Chairperson Sylvia Lucas. Good evening, Deputy Chair, and welcome to the agenda. Let's just first start off by giving an understanding about why this initiative is so important.
I didn't hear you clearly, Aldrin. You've been good morning and good morning to your viewers. Yes. I didn't hear the last part of what you asked me.
I said good evening, apologies for that. It's still the morning. Good morning and welcome to the agenda. Yes. But what I wanted to find out is what is the purpose behind this particular initiative and why is it so important?
First of all, Parliament have got a program wherein we make sure that we have sectoral parliaments. And in the sectoral parliaments, we try to address issues of all the different groupings within the community. And in 2018, the men's sector, as part of the South African National AIDS Council, started what they call the men's parliament. And from there, they moved out and they had parliaments, men's discussion, men's conference, what you want to call it, in districts and in provinces. And eventually, they decided to have a biennial arrangement where they will have a national men's parliament. And usually, the National Men's Parliament takes place around what they call International Men's Day. And indeed, this year, it happened again. But what we want to achieve through this Parliament is to solicit the role of men in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide, also in the program of HIV and AIDS and TB. And also this year, they added the importance of men's physical and mental health. Mm-hmm. So that is more or less the objective of the discussion, and also to determine a program wherethrough they can begin to involve men and to make men part of the broader debate, and to make sure that in the battle of ideas, men doesn't remain behind, and also in the action that need to be taken in the form of campaigns and other issues that we take the men of South Africa with us.
And I guess this then is in line with this year's theme, which is institutionalizing a response men's movement. Talk to us about that.
They started with the men's sector started with what they call the men's movement, to make sure that all the different initiatives at any level that are taken by men is brought together under one umbrella, and that is the umbrella of a men's movement. This year, they took a resolution that they will involve local government and then also the traditional affairs sector, to make sure that all the men are in this conversation. All the men are busy speaking and taking action to make sure that we mentor young boys, that we build better men, and that we also get a peaceful and a crime-free society. Mm-hmm. And that is why they are taking the move to say they want a men's movement, and not only different men's associations or even the men's sector, as the men's sector is part and parcel of SANAC, which is the South African National AIDS Council. They want to follow a broader objective, and they want to include all the men and the boys of South Africa, but also they want to develop a social contract with women and children, so that they can become not only the protectors, but there also should be an understanding that we want to live together in a peaceful environment. Yeah. And I think one of the issues that was really something that struck me was when the chairperson of the Moral Regeneration Movement said, but we started this campaign in 2016 as the Moral Regeneration Movement, but it seems as if we are not making any headway. So do we also want something to happen like what happened in America with the black man that was that was, in actual fact, the white man was sitting with his knee on his neck, and that was a trigger for what they call Black Lives Matter. I said, what must happen to trigger in South Africa a coordinated campaign that will be consistent and that will come to a point where women, girl and the girl child, as well as our children, will experience a peaceful life. So that was one of the issues. But also, the men's sector, together with other men's organizations, they sat together and they developed a charter for men in the same vein as the women's charter that are in existence for over 66 years, but also for 25 years in a democratic dispensation. So they are going to canvass this men's charter now across the length and breadth of South Africa to see how men is going to buy into this concept of making sure that we work together, and through working together we will be able to achieve more.
Deputy Chair, is it possible at all to have such an initiative that, although we say that this is an initiative which brings men together around how they respond to GBV, but is it possible to have such an initiative be successful if it excludes women, considering that men are, in the majority, the perpetrators of the violence? Would they know where the blind spots are?
I don't know whether you heard me when I said one of the resolutions or one of the issues that came up as an issue is that where do we take that social contract between men and women to together in one conversation sit down and to say that is what we as women would want to see and that is what we as men. You know, it is very sad, Aldrin, if you can sit there and you sit amongst men and some of them say, but we are weak. Yeah. We cannot speak. When sometimes the only language that we know is to take out a fist and to punch. So that is where we realize that it is important that there should be that agreement between men and women. And it came out from several speakers on the floor of the men's parliament that they think without the women, they are not going to be able to achieve what they want to achieve.
And you raise a very...
There is agreement on that one.
Yeah, you raise a very important issue around men themselves also feeling that they are weak and they don't know how to respond. On the other end, you'd have a situation where men themselves also fear men.
Now, one thing, and that came from the chairperson of the men's sector. And he said, and I want to try to repeat what he said in his own words. He said, if you feel you are weak, that is why we are here. Let us begin to speak to one another. Let us begin to ask for help if we need help. Let us not sit in our corners. And that is why, and they even said, the men themselves said, they become so depressed because sometimes they don't know where to go. But also the issue of even men's health. They say they are the ones that don't have the courage to go and test, for instance, for prostate cancer, for instance, for HIV, for TB. They will sit and they will not feel well. If the women doesn't take the first step, in many instances, men will perish because they don't have that conviction to go and do things because they feel they will be less of a man if they begin to acknowledge that they also have weaknesses. Yeah. But the men that attended the men's parliament, some of them started to understand that it is important that as men, they need to take the first step. And it's only when they get truly involved is when South Africa will see a peaceful democratic society.
Because those fragile masculinities indeed do exist and sometimes become a trigger for some of these men. But then let's speak about the role of the parent and speak about the household itself, because it is within the household that we get this concept that the man is the head of the household, and therefore language that you used earlier on, which I find a bit problematic, in that men are expected to be the protectors. Whereas women are saying that if men are not violent, there would be no need to protect women or children.
No, one thing that also happened is that we had the representatives of the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament there. And the children was very clear, nothing about us without us. And they say, parents, particularly fathers, don't have to show them their strong men kind of face. They need to show them that they care. They need to show them that they want to guide them, they want to mentor them, and that is important. And even the South African brewery had a campaign that they launched before, which they call #NoExcuse. And there should be no excuse for a parent not to do parenting. And there should be no excuse for a man to use violence in his house in order to be respected. The issue is that we need to change our whole outlook as to on parenting in the one sense, but also on the relationship within the family, because a healthy family constitutes a healthy society and a healthy community.
Yeah, and for instance, you, Deputy Chair, you are in a political space, and when we speak about role modeling, and we say that we need to see role models, even in males, being able to say that, is it possible at all to, when I ascend as a male person, to say, let me ascend with a female, let me ascend with a woman?
I think it's becoming more and more possible, because men are acknowledging that women can be equally as strong as men, and they also acknowledge the strength of partnership. That is what is important. You know, the founder of the International Men's Day said he started this day because of the role his own father played in his life. Because his father was a role model for him.
Yeah.
His father and other men in his society, in his community, used to be role models for them. And that is what informed him to start an acknowledgement of men. They don't want chocolates, they don't want flowers. The only thing that they want is that men should show that they equally care together with their spouses, together with other people within the community. And they are prepared to be role models and also to mentor the boys and their children, and to be fathers within their families. And that was quite also something that was touching, because in many instances our children are looking for role models in the wrong places. And if you can begin to be a role model yourself as a parent, already you are making a big difference within your community, within your family, within your society.
And just finally, Deputy Chair, looking into, we're approaching now 16 days of activism against women and children abuse. And some people say that this campaign almost comes in as a campaign where it almost feels as though that the stakeholders are just ticking the boxes instead of making sure that this particular campaign becomes impactful. What is it that you think that we could be doing differently this time around to make sure that this message does actually drive home, not even home only, but also in the workspace, because gender-based violence also finds expression in the workspace?
This particular year, as Parliament, we had almost a year-round program. First of all, on the issue of reviewing the Women's Charter, but also coupling it with the issues that are prohibiting women, and particularly the girl child, to reach their potential. And one of the issues that came out very strongly is what need to be done to assist people, particularly women, as victims of gender-based violence, but how do we deal with the perpetrators of gender-based violence? After we had 7 provinces, we finalized all the districts in 7 provinces. We called a law reform summit. And in the law reform summit, we actually called the Justice Department, we called the CGE, we called other stakeholders. And we started to say, this is what women are saying about the laws. There is the judiciary that is not necessarily coming to the party. There is the police department that is not necessarily playing their role. So what are we going to do? And many things came out. Even the fact that there is this thing of customary marriages, where traditional communities are not playing their role. So I was quite impressed yesterday in the Men's Parliament that they even engaged the traditional house, the House of Traditional Leaders, and the House of Traditional Leaders confirmed that they are going to host the men's dialogue in their different traditional areas, which means that at least for this year, for the start of the 6th Parliament, up until now, we had a year-round program, and the 16 days of activism together with the men's sector this year around will be bringing some of the responses, and we will be able to tell women that is how we are empowering you and that is how we are assisting you. So 16 days of activism, if we continue the way we have started with the 6th Parliament, we won't be hearing about 16 days just being an event. It is going to be a year-round program. And I think we are making headway with the government, we are making headway, and I think with the commitment of men, we are looking forward to a more peaceful society.
Deputy Chair of the NCOP, Sylvia Lucas, thank you so much for your time. Let's move over to the story. South Africa has recorded a big